This is a quick introduction to our Alpha 304 course, which is Introduction to Alpha Anywhere. This course has three primary objectives. The first one is to familiarize yourself with the Alpha Anywhere development environment, demonstrate the power of the low-code development capabilities within Alpha Anywhere, and show you how you can build a powerful mobile application in less than 2 hours with an incredible suite of features. Some of those application highlights of what we'll be building are the following. First is a mobile optimized user interface that can work both on phones and tablets. It'll include graphics and nice looking buttons. Powerful mobile menus, using all of the power of the hardware of the mobile device to have nice slide in, slide out transitions. Mobile optimized data driven lists. So these are lists that are built and connected into backend database and are dynamic. So they'll update themselves as the backend database changes. We're also going to show you how you can build in mapping for that data to be able to dynamically show location information on the mobile device. We also are going to show other visual controls that are available, including switches and powerful ways to visualize your data on the mobile application. We also are going to show you how you can use built-in image capture to both capture images and then synchronize those to the backend data. We're also going to enable signature capture, which is a common capability for most field service and other field type applications. Last but not least, we're going to show you how you can build powerful offline data management and synchronization without a single line of code. The system takes care of all of the synchronization of your data from your backend data source to your mobile device, including managing that data when you are disconnected from your backend server. And we'll show you how that's all built into the platform so you don't have to spend any time at all working on that aspect of your application, and you can devote your time to making your application look fabulous. As you can see, we're at the login screen. We do have a faked login scenario. In future training, we'll walk you through the extensive security capabilities of Alpha Anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and log into the screen, and this takes us to our internal home screen. As you can see, we have two actions that are available. One to look at our service calls. The other is our new service call. I'm going to click on new service call. We don't have that in the system at this time, but in a future training. At this time, service call is enabled. New service call is not enabled yet. You also notice we have a traditional menu system built into the application. So I'm going to touch up in the left corner, and you'll see we have a nice slide out menu. This allows you to quickly move to different parts of the system and also perform data items, such as synchronizing the data on your local device, or in the terms of refreshing data, pulling down a new set of data from the backend system. And when security is enabled, you can click the logout to return to the logout area. The heart of the system is the actual service calls. These are the service calls that have been downloaded from the backend database to the local device. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. As you can see, it has a series of service calls that have information displayed so it's easy to read for the user. You also notice as I scroll up and down, the system uses all of the hardware acceleration that's available within the device to make it a smooth and natural interaction. So I'm going to go ahead and select the first service call and go ahead and take a look. So you'll see we're at the home page of the service call. We have general information up top. We also have some editing fields, so we can actually edit the issue description, services performed. Now at the top, you'll also see we now have a smaller control bar. These are the different areas that are associated with a service call. So first and foremost, I can click on the little map, and it takes me and maps the location of our service. The next item here is a checklist, a traditional checklist interface where we can go through and a technician can check off the different required items here. This is very powerful for quality control and making sure that everything is done properly in the field and it is logged. The next area is photos. In here you'll see the technician can capture a series of photos while on the call. It also includes the ability to capture it from the photo roll of the mobile device, so in case they've already taken some pictures, they can associate it with the service call, or by clicking on it, it'll actually ask them to use their current camera settings. We also have an area where they can put in their part information and other information about what was done on the service call. Last but not least, we have a signature area. In this area, the person can sign for the service call, either the client or customer or the actual technician, or you collect both. The Alpha Anywhere platform allows you to collect and display that information offline. So all the information you've seen so far has been offline and local on the device and able to be accessed without connecting to the server. As you make edits, that information is saved to the local device, and when you're ready, you can click the Save button. It'll call the server and synchronize that data and update the backend database. There's sophisticated synchronization technology built into Alpha Anywhere that allows you to quickly and rapidly detect if there's conflicts and address them accordingly. So it's a very fluid and natural application, and as you'll see, it takes very little effort to actually build the application and put it together. As you'll see in our training, to actually put together this level of a sophisticated program does not take a lot of capabilities in terms of programming or coding. All these functionalities are built into the tool, and therefore you can rapidly generate and build applications of this level of sophistication in a very short period of time. So the first step of our training is to install the sample files that are included with the training content. So make sure you download the Alpha304 zip file. Then what I'd like you to do is go ahead and open up your File Explorer. Once that's opened up, let's go ahead and go to your Documents area and locate a folder called Alpha Anywhere V12. This folder was created when Alpha installed the development environment on your local system. And go ahead and double-click to open it up. Yours is most likely empty. I have some content from previous trainings. Now we can go here to Alpha304 and right-click on it and say Extract All. You can pick where you'd like to have it extracted. I'm going to actually extract it onto my desktop, so I'm going to go ahead and click Extract. And you'll notice that it creates a folder and opens up that window. So now what we can do is take the Alpha304 folder and move it into your Alpha Anywhere V12 folder environment. And this is a good practice to kind of put all of your projects in the same spot. Each project or workspace will have a different folder, and it makes it easy to find and locate things within your system. Once you've set up that folder, go ahead and double click on it to enter it, and you'll see there's some existing files. We'll come back and look at that a little later. The one I'd like you to find is Alpha304 Alpha 5 document. This is the primary workspace file. So go ahead and double click on it. This will launch your Alpha Anywhere development environment. You'll get a message in regards to the startup control panel. You should have open the web control panel when the workspace is open checked, and click OK. You'll also get a notice that it needs to analyze the components since this is the first time it's opened it up on your machine, and click OK. And now you'll be taken into the Alpha Anywhere environment, and you should be at the Web Projects Control Panel, and in my case at A5W Pages. In our next lesson, I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the development environment just to get you familiar with what's there and also what is the content of what is in the zip file that we unpacked and put into your environment. Project open, we can actually walk through and show you the different elements of the project. So first, let's talk a little bit about the Alpha development environment. What you have here is what's called the Web Projects Control Panel. The Web Projects Control Panel is where you're going to spend most of your time, and think of it as a file browser. You'll notice on the left-hand side that the different types of files that are involved in your project are categorized. So for instance, right now it's saying A5W Pages. This is basically our version of an HTML page that can run on our system. The most important one where you'll spend most of your time is called Web Components. So if you click there, it will actually show you here your web components. Now, you'll see I've included two components. One called Main Complete UX, that's the full finished product. And here we have Main UX, which is what we're going to start with. Basically, I built this and then stripped out parts of it so that we could kind of step-by-step build it out. And I wanted you to start with a basic structure so we could get right into the heart of how to build a data-driven offline system without a lot of other stuff getting in the way. I'm also going to use images. So if you go over here to images, you'll see we have a number of images we have included in here, and they're both PNGs and JPEGs. And you can see I brought in our logo and other things along those lines. Now, very important is that over time, you will accumulate a lot more files. So you'll notice you have the filter capability here. So if I wanted to find something like a logo, I could type right here, and what that does is filter what I'm seeing here in this category. And then I can remove it from there. That's a real quick walkthrough of the system. What I want to focus on is get you right into starting to build your first data-driven application, and we'll do that in the next section. As we showed in the demonstration, this is a data-driven offline application. Specifically, this application can connect to a back-end database, which I've pre-configured, and display and edit information on the mobile device and then sync it back up. And in order to do that, Alpha Anywhere has a very rich set of what are called connectors that connect to different types of databases. And we actually use the term, and if I'd like you to go up to Tools, Alpha DAO connection strings. And you'll see that in your project you have two connection strings. And what a connection string is basically a connection pointer. It says where is the database and what kind of database is. And for our training, we're using my server here just to simplify things, although I am giving you a copy of the database in case you'd like to set it up yourself. So I've pre-created these connection strings just to make things easy. Now, if you want to create your own connection string, you just click New, give it a name, and then click Build. And as you can see, there's a wide range of connection strings that are available for different types of back-end database environments, both SQL and NoSQL kind of environments. And each one of those will ask a set of parameters for you to let it know how to connect to that database, what credentials, etc. So connection strings are very important, and I'll point to a little bit more training you look at below to find out more how those set up and what you can do with them. Now, what I'd like to do next is I'm going to take you over into the database and show you what the database looks like that we're going to use. The data that we're going to be using for this project. So this is a MySQL database hosted on my server. You can see we have a number of different tables, and these tables will be used for future trainings. The one we want to pay attention to is called service calls. So let's go ahead and open that up. And you can see we have a set of data that we've created just to make things easy for you. And you notice it includes things like the contact name, company name, address. It also includes different things like the signature data and the email address, some Booleans for pass-fail. And also, if I go all the way over here, we have some GPS information and other items there to provide the content we need to really demonstrate what you saw earlier on from there. So really in our training, we're only going to use this service calls database, and that's the only one we're going to use at this time. But again, in future trainings, we're going to expand on this and include and use these other tables to develop and show you other techniques of building more sophisticated applications with Alpha Anywhere. So before we move on, I want to go through one other quick, nice little feature. Go ahead and go to the Web Projects Control Panel and go to Tools, Database Explorer. Go ahead and click the plus button, and this will bring up our existing connection strings. Go ahead and click CONN and click OK. Now you'll see it's added this connection string to our tree. Go ahead and click Open. You'll notice it's showing our tables, and we can actually see the tables in our connection string. If we had views and other things, those would show up here also. And in fact, we could go ahead and click on service calls here and see the different columns that are in that table. And one last thing you can do is you can right click on the table and say, for instance, show data in table, and you can see that data there. So it's a real quick and easy way to kind of check and inspect your database. Most likely you're using some other database tool to manage your database environment, but this is a handy tool to have in Alpha to go in and just check things out very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and now we can move on to the next step. I want to go ahead and walk through our main UX component. This is the starting point for our training. When you're at the Web Projects Control Panel, locate main_UX and double click on this. This is called a UX component. The UX component is your primary component in the Alpha Anywhere ecosystem that allows you to create very powerful forms, both online and offline forms. So whenever you see the word UX, think form, but much more powerful. We'll cover this in another training segment, but Alpha uses a panel metaphor. So let's go ahead and walk through and look at what this looks like in operation. Then we'll come back and look at the different panels. The reason why is I want to get you familiar with how it's structured, because I've basically left in the basic structure, and then we're going to populate it with the data elements that are needed to run the application. So in order to do so, Alpha has a built-in working preview functionality, and you'll see it's a tab up here. Go ahead and click working preview, and what that will do is run the UX inside of the development environment. As you can see, I'm seeing the UX running right here. Now you can modify this to different screen sizes, etc., so you can get a feel how it's going to operate on different tablets and different types of phones, etc. I'm going to go ahead and we'll walk through it. So you'll see we're immediately presented with our first panel card. This is our first sort of set of content, and it's our login page. And as we mentioned, it's not really connected to the security system, but you can click login here, and what that will do is navigate you from this panel card into the application. And then you'll see we have service calls here, and this is again a second panel card with a series of buttons on it. And when I click here, it takes you to the next panel card. Now, as you saw before, there will be a list of items that will populate here, which are your service calls. They're not in there yet, and that's what we're going to do next. Now you'll notice this area up top. This is called a control bar. So you have your panel card, but you also have up top area where you can specify content, because often you'll have sort of a sticky area up here with menus and text and titling, and it's very, very useful. In fact, what you'll see later on, we're going to have two, one for the top level and a second for navigation. So let's go in and look at what this is behind the scenes. So you'll see that we have at the very top level what's called a panel navigator. And a panel navigator, basically think of it as a holder that will hold different cards of information and show them one at a time. So you'll see right below there we have PC login. So I'm going to highlight all of that. This is our initial card. And you saw we had an image, we had a username and password, and a button here for logging in. Then when we clicked on this login button, it actually took us to our second area, which is this main menu here. And we'll go into a little bit more of having nested navigators, etc. So remember, we went in there and we see we have our button service calls and our button for new service call. And you'll also notice at the top of that area, we had our control bar, our area that had that text in that menu up top. And we'll come back and explore this a little bit more from in the future. But this is where that container is at the top called a panel header that will actually put the information at that top area and keep it there whenever the phone moves or transitions from portrait to landscape mode. So you can see that we're basically breaking it into sets of panel cards, and you'll see we have another panel card here called PC list, and then one for detail view, which is a little more involved. What we're going to do is now flesh out and add in the content so you can start seeing how you can take this basic structure and connect it into your data source and have Alpha take care of displaying everything for you. So now our next step is to actually connect our system into the backend data. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Web Projects Control Panel. I'm going to open up our complete one. And I'm going to go ahead and do a working preview of this. And notice I can have multiple items open at one time. So I'm going to go ahead and follow through our process. So log in. Then we have our next panel card. I'm going to go to service calls. And now you're going to see a list of data. And this is data that came from our backend database, was brought down to the local device, and now is managed locally. So our next step is to go in and actually create this list. And the neat thing about this, so you'll see in a few moments, is Alpha has built-in wizards to make that a very simple process. So go ahead and return to main UX. Go ahead and locate our panel card PC list. This is where we want that information to show. When you click login, it takes you to this panel card. When you click service calls, it takes you to this panel card. And we want that list to show up here. So go ahead and make sure you've selected the opening tag PC_list, and then look over here on the left-hand side and look for data controls. If this happens to be closed, just go ahead and click the little icon to open it up. And what we're looking for is something called list. So let's go ahead and click on that. And you'll notice that it opens up a new control. Now, when this opens up, it may look like this. And what I'd like you to do is go ahead and select where it says create multiple new controls at once. This is an interface I usually use for all of my steps. It saves you a lot of steps later on. So now what you can do is type in what you want to call this list, because you may have multiple lists in a single UX control. So I'm going to call it list service calls. And so I've used list to designate it, and this is going to be the name of the control. Now, I could go ahead and click here and click OK, and then go ahead and manually set everything up, but we have a shortcut. If you'll notice down here, we have list control quick setup Genie. So all you need to do is click here, and this opens up our Genie. And you'll see that we have a series of questions it's going to ask us to build our list for you. And the neat thing about it is it's going to create buttons, it's going to create connections, it's going to do all this work for us. And then our job will really just kind of rearrange and update things so it works the way we want it. So first we need to say, okay, where are we getting our data? Now remember, we had the connection string. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that. And that opens up our connection string selector. Remember, we covered this. This is our pointer to our database. So go ahead and select CONN and click OK. Now we have different methods for sort of extract the data from our backend system. We're going to use fields from a table, so leave that enabled. And now we need to select the table. So if you click on the 3 ellipsis button over here, it opens up a browser. And this is one of the nice features. You really don't have to write a lot of SQL or anything else. You can really point and click, and the system will build that for you. So you'll notice here we have service calls, and we go on and go ahead and click OK. And this will go ahead and tie it to service calls. So now we're tied to that table. Next we go to field list and click on that. Now you'll notice we have a full suite of fields that are available. It actually looked in that table and grabbed those for us. Now some applications you don't need to use all of them, so you can check off which ones you want. But in our case, we want to go ahead and select all of the fields because we're going to use that in our application. So go down here to where it says select all and click select all. This will select all the fields that are currently in that table and click OK. Now, this is called the filter criteria. This allows you to filter the data that comes down to the device. It's very powerful because you can reduce the amount of data you're handling, which is always good for speed and performance. I want to go ahead and modify that. So let's go ahead and click filter and click the ellipsis button right here. And you'll see that we can build it visually. So we have all of our different fields on the left. And so if I scroll down into this one right here, active, it's a binary field. And what we want to do is only bring down the active service calls. So we double click that, and then we can go equals 1, because in this database it's saved as either a 1 or 0. 1 is active, 0 is not active. And we just want to bring down active. Again, reduces the amount of data on the local device and speeds up the overall process for syncing and other aspects along those lines. So go ahead and click OK. Now you'll see that what it's really doing is building a SQL statement for us. So it does all that for us. We don't have to do that. Now you can select an order, distinct, etc. There's a lot of little adjustments you can make from here. But that is now we're telling it we want to build this list from this fields from a table, what fields, and any filtering we need to do. I'm going to go ahead and stop here for a moment and pick it up in the next one, where we're going to go ahead and do the detail view and get that set up next. Now we're ready to add a detail view. So the top level allows you to bring down the data locally. But the detail view actually enables your ability to edit that data when it's on the local device. So you don't have to have a detail view. If you're only doing a view only kind of scenario, you could just do this top part and call it a day. You'll also notice that we can enable a search part that automatically builds searching into your list. So if you want to filter your list on the device and make it easy for users to find the information they want, this wizard will allow you to do it. So to enable detail view, we click the little plus button and enable it. Now here are the defaulted values. We're going to go ahead and leave that as is, but you could go in and fine tune this when you create your own lists in the future to say only certain fields should be in the detail view. So if you're only editing certain pieces, etc. Now last but not least, I want to go down here to where it says disconnected operation. Go ahead and click the plus button, and you'll see we have the ability to persist list data to local storage. And this does an enormous amount of things. When you enable this, this builds in all of the essentially fundamental architecture to query the data, save it locally, allow you to edit that, and then sync it back transparently to the back-end system. And you have a lot of little hooks you can use to adjust that process, but Alpha does all of that work for you. And I highly recommend whenever you build your initial interfaces, use the built-in wizard, because then your job after that is just fine-tuning and adjusting to how you want it to look and feel. So let's go ahead and click OK. In a few moments, your screen will update, and your screen will show it's created a number of different controls for you. So first and foremost, it's created our list control, and that's that fundamental control that talks to the backend database. And also you'll see in a few moments that actually shows the interface and really displays the data to the user in that kind of scrollable list concept. And you also see it created a set of fields. These are all the fields that we selected, and they're connected to that database table. And the nice thing about it is that now Alpha will take care of bringing down the data locally, and then it will connect your list to these. So as you navigate through the list, it will actually update the data as you see on the screen. As you can see, it's created a whole series of different fields. They're all text fields, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as we start modifying it. But you can see they're all different little text fields. And then also very important is down below, it created a series of buttons. These are pre-created buttons that allow you to manipulate and edit data. So for instance, to save a change to a record, to create a new record, to delete a record, and then also most importantly is synchronize, which will take any of your changes and persist them back to the backend database. So the nice thing about this is it does a lot of that work for you, and now we can get into kind of cleaning it up and making it work the way we want it. Forward, it's very important for us to save this component. So click Save here. Once it's rendered and saved the component, by the way, the rendering is a speed process. It does a little work when you save it, so it serves it up faster when it's running on your machine. We can now go ahead and do a quick demonstration before we go into fine-tuning the interface to show you that we have an active, real mobile app that can do things offline. So let's go ahead and show you that real quick. So let's go ahead and click Working Preview. Then what I'd like you to do is let's go ahead and navigate into the system. So we click Login, then we click Service Calls. And you'll notice that it doesn't look great yet, and that's what we're going to spend our time on. But we have our list control here with data that's populated from the backend database. And then if you notice down here, we have a set of fields. So actually, if I click and drag here, you can see that it's showing me all the records that are coming back from my backend database. So you can see it defaults to a grid-like metaphor, which really doesn't work on a mobile device, but we'll be able to adjust that using a built-in feature. Now I'm going to go here and scroll down here, and you'll see that when I click on a row up top, it automatically updates those detail fields that we created. So it's wired our list control together. So it understands when this list item is selected, here's the information there. And what's really neat about that is the following. So let's go ahead and click this. I'm clicking number 4. I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm just going to make a little change. So I'm going to go all the way down. Sorry, it takes a little bit there to get to the bottom. Let's change billable time. I'm going to change that from 57 to 58. Now I'm going to scroll down, and you'll notice that my Save button is now enabled. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see a couple interesting things. First, the Synchronize button now has become enabled, which means that it understands that something's changed locally and it's ready to be synchronized to the backend database. And if we want to see that, I can scroll all the way back up the top. And once I get back to the list, you'll notice that the row we selected on has a little orange caret to it. What that tells you is that this information in this row on the list has been updated locally on this machine or device, but has not been persisted back to the backend database. But if I go down all the way to the bottom and I click Synchronize, you'll see in a moment that the Synchronize button now goes to a gray, and I'll scroll all the way back up here, and you'll notice the little orange caret is gone. So the really neat thing about Alpha is that it does all of that plumbing, that wiring to handle connecting the list to the detail view. And then when you edit the detail view, it's tracking those changes, updating the local list. And then when you click Synchronize, it's doing all the code to call back to the database, compare, update, and then update the indicator to show that that's been done. And so that's a lot of time savings that allow you to focus on your user interface and not on plumbing and coding. So we're going to do the following. We're going to do two key things next. One is we need to move this off a single panel card. So you notice everything is on this single panel card. And all we really want to show this list of service calls on that panel card. We will move these to a different panel card temporarily and then start distributing them through our app and do other things there. Once we've done that, we'll also go in and change this from this grid interface into a mobile optimized interface. And that's really nice because then it's going to look really sharp on the phone and be intuitive for people using it as they function. But the important thing I want to get across is that the plumbing's taken care of for you. You are going to spend most of your time focused on interface kind of elements versus worrying about code and writing queries and other things along those lines. It is very handy to use the List Control Quick Start to set up your list detail view. But the list and detail view use default formatting. And you'll also notice that it placed all the controls on a single panel card. And as you've seen in our finished application, we distribute that through the different panel cards to make it easy for users to see content and navigate appropriately. What we're going to do is focus on the list control for right now and get that formatted and looking great. And then we're going to move on to the detail view. But the first thing we need to do before we move into that is to separate this content here from here. And so we're going to move this content over to a location so we can just focus on the list control. So let's go ahead and return back into the design environment by clicking on the Design tab. And if you scroll down till you see our panel card PC list, that's where we put our content in here. And you'll notice it has our list control, and then it has a container, and inside that container are all of our fields and our buttons. Now, the important thing to realize is that this container is an invisible control. It's used to format, structure, and do a lot of our other really neat little tricks. And so it's equivalent to a div in an HTML page. So you never really see it, but it allows you to control everything within there. So what I'd like you to do is click on the container 1_1, scroll down, and then shift click on the container end. That will highlight both the container and all the elements within it. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and put them down here in this panel card PC detail view home. So I just kind of want to move it out of here temporarily here. Now there's two ways to do it. You'll notice there's a series of icons up top. This is how you control things that are highlighted in this area here. So you'll notice we have an up and down. That will take whatever's selected here and move it up or down within the structure. You can also click this to take everything to the top or the bottom. So for me to move it here into panel card, I have to click down a few times, and that's okay, but when you have a fair number of controls, it's kind of slow. As you can see next to it is a really neat little control called Move to a Specified Location. And if you click on this, it actually opens up a picture or diagram showing your current structure. And you'll notice the things that I've highlighted are kind of yellowish with a dark text. So the neat thing is I can scroll all the way down till I get to the panel card PC detail view home. And make sure you're selecting the opening tag. And down here below you can see move before or after. Click after and then click OK. So now instead of having to move things up and down individually, it's essentially like a batch move scenario. So now all of those items are now within this container, and now the only thing we have in here is our list service calls. So I'd like you to click Save. This will preserve any changes you have. It also does something nice. Alpha in the background will save a copy of your control every time you save. And I'll show you a little later how if you get into a problem where something went wrong, you made a mistake, or something just doesn't seem right, you can quickly kind of go back in time. It's a very, think of it as a light version of version control. It's not to replace it, but it's helpful from there. So now we have our PC list here in our container view. So let's go ahead and do a quick working preview. I'm going to go ahead and click through, and now you'll notice that the only thing that's in our panel card is our list control. Now one other thing you'll notice, the list control is here. Actually I can click and drag it up and down and see where it's at. But you'll notice it's in a small bounding box, and then it has a field label. So the default template is basically the kind of bounding box in there. Well, Alpha has a really neat function, so let's go check that out. Let's go back into Design, click Service Calls. Now you'll notice it's the only thing inside this panel card. So if you click on List Service Calls, go over to the right-hand side and find List Properties. And you'll see one here called Fill Container. So let's go ahead and click Fill Container. We can then go ahead and do a working preview. Going to go and navigate into it, and now you'll notice something interesting. Still not where I want, but you'll notice that that bounding box is gone, the little header's gone, and now it takes up the whole screen. So it's a mobile paradigm. It basically consumes this. And if let's say I move it like this, watch this. I'm going to go to horizontal. You'll see that it lays it out, so it's responsive in nature. And that's very handy on mobile devices. So that fill container is the important aspect. And the thing that you need to realize, it needs to be the only control in there because it's going to take all the space here. And that works on a phone, tablet, whatever you have, even a desktop web. So next we're going to go ahead and focus on going in and actually editing and making this look more of a mobile interface instead of that columnar spreadsheet style interface that it is right now. Now that we've set up our list service calls by itself on this panel card, we can edit it. You can either double click on list service calls or click list properties to open up and edit the list control. So you'll notice that we're now in the detail editing, and there's a huge amount of different capabilities built into Alpha Anywhere. That's one of the important things to realize, is that even though Alpha Anywhere does a lot of things for you, you have complete control over how you want it to operate at a very detailed level. So you'll notice we have a set of 5 tabs. Data source, this is where the data is coming from. As you can see, we have different locations you get data from. Fields, these are the different fields that are coming back from our data source. These fields aren't necessarily have to be shown on the user interface. They're the ones that are being managed in the back end. We have list properties, detail view. This tells how the interaction between the detail view and the list occurs. And last but not least, list layout. So when I click on list layout, this is how you're actually going to visualize what you see in the list. And it defaults to what is called a columnar function. So you can see it took every field and put it into our columns here. And sometimes you do want a columnar function. That's very nice for desktop web. And so you can actually move things back and forth here to say what is displayed. So remember, here are all the fields, and then on your layout, you can actually then define what fields are going to be shown to the user. You can have multiple layouts for an individual list, which is very powerful and very neat in terms of being able to handle and show different layouts for different types of devices. But in our case, we want to move away from the columnar layout. So the first thing we need to do is go back to List Properties. I want you to scroll down until you get to Layout Properties. And I'll go over here where it says Column and set the drop-down box, and you'll see all the different options you have. So you actually have some pretty neat ones in here. You have Kanban, which is a traditional Kanban structure, fully customizable, one that shows things on a map, and another on the chart. And those are really neat because it basically uses that offline data to use all of these different formats. What we want is freeform, because we're going to create a freeform instead of columnar layout. Now, once you've done that, there are different types of freeform. We're going to keep it vertical, but this allows you to control kind of how things flow on the user interface. Now, once we've done that, we're going to go back here to list layout. And you'll notice we have a blank screen. And on the left-hand side, we see our different items. These are your different data fields that are available. So you can use standard HTML and CSS to lay this out. So for instance, if you wanted just something simple, you could put, say, sample ID, and then a break, and then maybe contact name, and you can put in all the different HTML. You can attach your own classes. It's really neat what you can do, but we're going to take a shortcut. I like to have Alpha do a lot of the work for me. So I'm going to go ahead and remove what I have there. And what I'd like you to do is go ahead and click down here to predefined templates and click there. Then you'll notice there are a whole bunch of predefined mobile-oriented templates that are available. And these are built into the system. It's really kind of nice because then you don't have to be out there developing your own CSS and doing your other aspects there. So what I'd like you to do is find this level 1, level 2 context, detail, and summary. Select that. Click OK. This will bring up a handy template mapper. So let's start here at level 1 and say we want contact name. So for level 1 contact name, level 2 what I'd like you to select is company name. Summary, we'd like to go ahead and use the problem description. And then for detail, what I'm going to do is use the address. And for context, I'm going to go ahead and put in call time. So again, context call time, level 1 contact name, level 2 company name, summary problem, detail address, and click OK. And you'll see what it does is it basically inserts a pre-made set of CSS and HTML. Then if I scroll over here, you'll notice that it inserted into that the dynamic fields that we'd like to display. So when this runs for each row in your list, it's going to merge these data fields, and this dictates the formatting. Now the neat thing about that is that these are pre-built, nice ones that are in there, but you can build your own. You're not limited to this. Now we can immediately see what this is going to look like before we even close out here. So if you go down here to the left and click on the preview list, it'll render your data and show you an example of what it's going to look like. You can say, oh yeah, that looks pretty good. We've got a little more data, but we can change that in terms of formatting. But this is what I want. So it's really handy if you're making changes, modifications. Let's say, for instance, let's show you a quick example. Let's say, for instance, an address right there. I want to also include right behind it the city, state, and zip. So you'll notice what I did is I put my insertion point here and then just clicked on these. So now it's going to merge that data. We can do a preview list. And you'll notice now it puts not only the city, but also, not only the address, but the city, etc. So it's very flexible for you to be able to tune the interface to exactly what you want. And you can put a fair amount of context information in there so it's easy for the users. Now, once we've done that, we're ready to go back in and check it out actually running in our working preview. To do so, click OK. Now you'll notice something, and you'll see these pop up. When Alpha identifies something that needs to be set up, it has a bunch of common elements that it needs to be set up. So for instance, we're going to have these service images, and it's saying we need to set certain parameters so that they'll display correctly. Go ahead and let Alpha fix it, because often it will take care of common little things that will get in the way of you being successful. So go ahead and say yes. That'll adjust our list. Now we're done. Let's go ahead and save. We'll go ahead and go into working preview. I'm going to go back to my vertical orientation, click login, service calls, boom. Now we're starting to see something a little bit more. So instead of that columnar layout, you now have this nice, highly detailed set of rows that are mobile oriented with the little caret here that kind of indicates if you click on it, something's going to happen. And there's a wide range of templates that are available for you to take advantage of. What we're going to do next is go ahead and show you how to then, when you click on this, to go in and see the detail. And we also want to do a couple quick adjustments. So for instance, maybe I want to change this formatting of this date right here to show you how easy it is for Alpha to do the work for you. So we have our formatting almost there. We need to do two things now. One is we want to modify this date to make it look a little less busy. That will also show you how you can use powerful built-in formatting tools to make your interface look perfect. The other thing we want to do is when we click on each row, we actually need to show the detail view. So Alpha is going to actually connect the fields. So it's going to take care of populating the fields, but we still need to do what's called panel navigation, take you from this panel to the panel where your content is at. And that will build a very strong key skill, because a lot of what you're doing is moving the user around to different panels to show them different perspectives on the data they have on their mobile device. So let's do the formatting and then work on that navigation. So return to design, locate your service calls list, either click list properties or double click on it. This takes you back into it. Now, as we mentioned, our list layout just takes your controls, or rather your fields, and merges it with CSS and HTML. So you can apply regular formatting like colors, bolding, etc. And I would highly suggest using CSS classes to do that. But if we want to actually format the data in a field, we go over here to the Fields tab. So here are all of our fields. here's all the way we can modify it. There's an enormous amount of flexibility. So what we're looking for is call time. And the way we know that is if we go back to list layout, you'll see that we're using the call time for that item up in the right corner. So we go to fields, go to call time. So once you've selected call time, if you go over here, you'll see there's a client-side area. And it's important that you use client-side because the data may be on the local device and not connected to the server. And you'll notice we have a date time display format. So go ahead and select that. This brings up a dialog that allows you to adjust that. Here we can define a custom format. Now notice there's some help text here. You can define the formatting at a sort of a default top level, but I just want to show the custom format right now. So we can click that. We'll do the date format. Let's say day, month, year. Actually, we'll use month, day, year. And then for time format, we'll go ahead and use a pre-formatted one, which is like hours and minutes, AM, PM. So you can create your own, and this is the nomenclature for that, or you can use these defaulted ones, which are kind of nice. So let's click OK. Click OK, click OK. So notice now we have a date time display format for our time. And when it gets merged into this, it will apply that information. So let's click OK. We'll go ahead and save our UX. Click Working Preview. I'm going to click Login, Service Calls. And now you notice we have a little nicer formatted date time format. And again, you can adjust this to however you want. There are also dynamic ways to modify this. So if you want to use any kind of international or other things, you can do that within the system. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and show you how you can quickly add a behavior so that when someone clicks on a row, it takes them to the panel card. So let's go ahead and add that navigation. Return back to our design. So as we mentioned, your content is shown in different panel cards. So in our case, we're showing when we're at the point showing the list in this panel card list. And what we want to do is move focus from here to currently our PC detail view home. That's where our detail view is here. And we use a built-in function to do that called panel card navigation. Now, one thing I want to do real quick is that you'll notice that it's just not a panel card. We have another panel navigator. So when we set the focus to here, we're actually inside this environment, and you'll see as we unwrap this a little later, we actually have a series of panel cards that work together to show you all the detail. So we don't have to put everything on a single panel card. And we'll talk a little bit more of how this panel navigator works. But the thing you need to know is that if you go from this to here, this is the content that will be shown, this is the content that will be hidden. So the way we do that is actually within the list service calls. So let's go ahead and double click and open that up. And so you'll notice that we have down below a series of what are called list events. Now you can get that in two locations. You can go to list properties, scroll down, and you'll see there's some different events. For instance, on click, which is what we want. And a click is equivalent to a tap on a phone. So we can actually go to list properties to on click, and this is where you can put behaviors. When the system detects one of these, it's going to trigger, and it's going to trigger some JavaScript. But what's cool, Alpha will write that for you. The other alternative is you can just click here on list events, and this opens up a list of all the different events. And as you can see, there's a ton of different events. So you're able to trap whenever anything happens, you can add your own special sauce to make things work exactly how you want. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll up until I find the on-click event right here. And this gives you a little description of how it works. So in here is what's going to be triggered when you click the on-click event, or when this event triggers. Now this is JavaScript, so I could do, alert hello, and every time someone clicked on a row, it would emit an alert hello. But we don't want you to have to build all of this JavaScript to do more sophisticated things. So we have a very powerful tool. It's called Action JavaScript. So you'll notice right here is where you can put in your JavaScript, but up here we have Action JavaScript. So let's go ahead and click on that. And you'll notice you can have two options. You can create it or you can insert the code. So first we need to create that Action JavaScript. So let's go ahead and select that. And this opens up our JavaScript actions. So we already have a bunch that have already been created. But what I want to do is create my own. So I'm going to create a new action here. I'm going to call it nav detail view and click OK. This gives you a notice saying you've created it, but you need to edit that action. So you'll see that it's currently in red because it's been created, but there's nothing inside of it. It's sort of empty at this point in time. So now what we can do is click Edit Action, and now the magic occurs. So you'll notice we're in our action builder, and you'll click here on the plus to add a new action. So let's go ahead and do that. Now this you can see where a lot of the power of the low code comes in. All of these are built-in pre-made action JavaScript that allow you to do things. Showing maps, opening reports, navigating, an enormous number of things that are built into it, and new ones all the time. You can see they're categorized on the left, and then we have a full list here. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and type panel, P-A-N-E-L, and you'll notice we have one here called panel actions. And so let's go ahead and select that and click OK. And this brings up now a action builder for panels. So you can see right now there's different actions. If we click the drop down, you can do a whole bunch of different things. You can resize, remove panels, set URLs to panels, you name it. The one you're going to use most of the time is setting the active panel. That actually does two things. It sets the focus in the system, and then the system will automatically present the data in that panel. So click Set Active Panel. Once you've done that, you'll see some different properties are available. Click the drop down and locate PC_detail_view_home. So what we're basically telling it to do is set the active panel to where all of our fields are at, and click OK. Now we can give this a message, detail view home. And the reason we do that is you'll notice now we have a single action in here, but we can actually have multiple actions chained together at one time. So if you want to do 2 or 3 things, you can actually use this builder to have a sequence of items that happen and that are triggered. In our case, we only have one, but we do like to put comments on it so we kind of come back later on, we know what it's doing, because this can be fairly generic. So let's click Save. So now you'll notice that our nav detail view is now green, so we can click OK. So we're back here. So instead of creating and editing that, because we've already done that, we click Insert Code to Run JavaScript Action, and this just brings up our list. We find the one we want and click OK. So now it puts in a little piece of JavaScript that says, hey, when you are run, go find this and do the actions within here. So the bulk of the time, which is really nice, is you can create these actions and then just trigger them on different buttons, etc. There's another reason this is really powerful, is that by having all of your different actions centralized, I can trigger them on different buttons, so I don't have to embed it all over my interface. They're basically sort of centralized to make it easier to manage it. But let's click OK. So now we have the on-click event for our list control. It will run this action that's going to do that. Navigation. So let's click OK. Now notice that the on-click event now here is showing that it's dark or bolded. That's because this has been defined. If we go into list events, you'll notice that it's showing us what ones have been defined. Pretty nice, handy when you start having a few more items happening in your interface. So now we're going to click Save, do Working Preview, click Login, Service Calls. Now we have our same service call. I'm going to click and drag, but now watch what happens when I click or tap on this. You'll notice that it's navigated to our detail view. So remember, we moved our detail view over on that panel card. So now when you go here, it's going to do it. Now remember, it's already connected all the data for you, so you don't need to do that. Now you'll notice these little buttons in here. Guess what's behind there? Are just little pieces of action JavaScript that make you go from panel card to panel card to panel card. So we have one for the top level, for the map, for the checklist, etc. And in fact, see this one right here, if I click here, it basically takes me back to my list panel card. So once you get handy in understanding the panel card, it's very simple to have the navigation put together. Now, if I click Malcolm, we're looking at Malcolm's record, go back here, and you see it's very fluid and very nice because it can use that animation and other tricks to make it feel like a native mobile application. So now that we've got that connected, we can really start digging into making this detailed view look a lot better and use a lot of the built-in functions and control types to really make it simple and easy for your users to interact and edit and modify the data. Now, before we move on, I wanted to take a quick moment to show you that the templating built into Alpha is very, very powerful. So let's go back to design real quick. I'm going to open up list service calls. And I'm going to go to list layout. As we mentioned, you can merge the data with the template, in this case a mobile optimized one, to create a very nice looking mobile list metaphor. But what's neat is Alpha actually includes a whole series of templates that you can use. And they're not just limited to mobile. So for instance, I'm here seeing where we found the mobile ones, but I'm going to click more templates. And you'll see that there's some really sharp templates in here that allow you to create sort of card badge metaphors, and they include buttons and other things like that. So this is a great starting point if you want to create some really neat metaphors in your user interface for people. And all this is dynamic in terms of the images can be dynamic to what's in your database, the headings, everything can be modified to your heart's desire. So realize you're not limited to just the built-in ones, but you can use these and then also bring in your own CSS and HTML to make your apps look exactly what you want. Now that we've set up our first one, we can rapidly modify our other ones. It's a combination of some manual steps, but also there's some really nice built-in automation tools to help you rapidly update these items. So the first thing we need to do is turn these text boxes into switches and then also change the label. So let's go back into design. Let's find check number 2. So for each of the items here, you just go to the top to control type, select switch, and click OK. That transforms it from a text box into a check. So let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and go through each one of these and change those so we can move to the next step. Now that we have them all now set up as switches, we need to go into each one of them and set the label to the label we want above it. So remember, we have power here. If we go to check 2, it's going to use the default label. So in the case of ours, the next one's vent. So I'll go right here to label and do vent. And click OK. That will now change the label to the word vent. So let's go ahead and do all of these. Look at the list. You can pause the video while we go through and modify those to match my current implementation. Now that we've modified those, we still have one leftover checkbox. So we really don't need that one. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one here and highlight it. Then you'll look up here that we have 2 X's, one with X with lines, another one individual. You want to use the single X. If you click there, it's going to confirm, and then it's going to remove that control from the interface. And it takes care of rewiring everything so it doesn't cause any kind of errors. So again, if you want to remove anything, just use that. Be careful of this. This removes all objects, which you probably don't want to do. So now that we have them all as switches with the right label on them, we want to go ahead and modify some other parameters. So for instance, remember we set the control width and the switch width to be 100%. Now it is getting a little tedious having to go through each element, and there's no way around that for switching the control type and the label, but we do have a neat trick for these other properties. So I'm going to go ahead and select control container width. Then I'm going to go up here and look for the little eyedropper. Click that eyedropper and it brings up our list of controls on the screen. And you can go down here and you'll notice for check 1 it's actually showing you the property there as 100%. So now click and drag to select all of our checks or switches and click set properties. In a moment it will apply that 100% to every one of these properties. So let's do the same thing for switch width. Click on check number 1 here. Select the property over here so it knows what you want to copy. Click here and notice it remembers my last selection and click set properties. So that speeds up the overall process. Again, there's certain things you can't copy and paste, but a lot of the properties you can. So once you have that first item set up and ready to go, you can copy and paste. The only other thing I would probably do is for these different ones here, for instance, this one is vent. I would maybe go to the on state and say closed, and then for the off state, open or something like that. So actually probably reverse that, open, closed. And that can be dependent on your application, how you want it to be from there. So let's go ahead and save this and make sure everything looks good. Log in, service calls there, let's go there, and starting to look pretty nice. So you can see that they're all lined up correctly, they're all using 100%, and notice with Vent, it uses the different terminology for what's going on, which is helpful. You don't really know what is what, so this helps you decide what that is from there. So as you can see, certain things, you have to pretty much so edit on a case-by-case basis, but other properties such as width and height, etc., you can kind of copy and paste and quickly apply those elements. And you'll see later on, we're going to use that over and over because it speeds up our development and implementation process. Now that we've set up our first one, we can rapidly modify our other ones. It's a combination of some manual steps, but also there's some really nice built-in automation tools to help you rapidly update these items. So the first thing we need to do is turn these text boxes into switches and then also change the label. So let's go back into design. Let's find check number 2. So for each of the items here, you just go to the top to control type, select switch, and click OK. That transforms it from a text box into a check. So let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and go through each one of these and change those so we can move to the next step. Now that we have them all now set up as switches, we need to go into each one of them and set the label to the label we want above it. So remember, we have power here. If we go to check 2, it's going to use the default label. So in the case of ours, the next one's vent. So I'll go right here to label and do vent. And click OK. That will now change the label to the word vent. So let's go ahead and do all of these. Look at the list. You can pause the video while we go through and modify those to match my current implementation. Now that we've modified those, we still have one leftover checkbox. So we really don't need that one. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one here and highlight it. Then you'll look up here that we have 2 X's, one with X with lines, another one individual. You want to use the single X. If you click there, it's going to confirm, and then it's going to remove that control from the interface. And it takes care of rewiring everything so it doesn't cause any kind of errors. So again, if you want to remove anything, just use that. Be careful of this. This removes all objects, which you probably don't want to do. So now that we have them all as switches with the right label on them, we want to go ahead and modify some other parameters. So for instance, remember we set the control width and the switch width to be 100%. Now it is getting a little tedious having to go through each element, and there's no way around that for switching the control type and the label, but we do have a neat trick for these other properties. So I'm going to go ahead and select control container width. Then I'm going to go up here and look for the little eyedropper. Click that eyedropper and it brings up our list of controls on the screen. And you can go down here and you'll notice for check 1, it's actually showing you the property there as 100%. So now click and drag to select all of our checks or switches and click Set Properties. In a moment, it will apply that 100% to every one of these properties. So let's do the same thing for switch width. Click on check number 1 here. Select the property over here so it knows what you want to copy. Click here and notice it remembers my last selection and click Set Properties. So that speeds up the overall process. Again, there's certain things you can't copy and paste, but a lot of the properties you can. So once you have that first item set up and ready to go, you can copy and paste. The only other thing I would probably do is for these different ones here, for instance, this one is vent. I would maybe go to the on state and say closed, and then for the off state, open or something like that. So actually probably reverse that, open, closed. And that can be dependent on your application, how you want it to be from there. So let's go ahead and save this and make sure everything looks good. Log in, service calls there, go there, and starting to look pretty nice. So you can see that they're all lined up correctly. They're all using 100%. And notice with Vent, it uses the different terminology for what's going on, which is helpful. You don't really know what is what, so this helps you decide what that is from there. So as you can see, certain things, you have to pretty much so edit on a case-by-case basis, but other properties such as width and height, etc., you can kind of copy and paste and quickly apply those elements. And you'll see later on, we're going to use that over and over because it speeds up our development and implementation process. The next area we're going to focus on is mapping. So I'm in the finished product here, so I want to show you what it looks like. We're going to click on the map icon, and you'll notice it takes us to a panel card that has a map, and including that, it puts a marker where the address of the current record is. And this is very easy and simple to do with Alpha's low-code methodology. But we need to do one thing first. I'm going to go ahead and go into Design. I'm going to go ahead and find our map. And over on the right-hand side in the properties, you'll notice one that's called Google Maps API key. In order for this to work, we need an API key. So I'm including a video that will walk you through the process of going to Google and getting that set up and getting that key. There's no charge to sign up and get the key, and especially for test and development, there won't be any charges you will incur. So let's go ahead and get that done first, and then once you have that, we can continue adding a map to our user interface. Now that you have your Google Map API, we can move forward. So the first thing I'd like you to do is go back into your design and then locate the panel card called PC Detail View Map. And what I'd like you to do next is go over to the left-hand side and look in the data controls and scroll down until you get and see the map and click on that icon there. And then I'm going to put in here map service call and click OK. Now we have that map in there, we need to do two things. First, what I'd like you to do is go over to the right-hand side and where it says fill container, click there and enable that because we want the map to take up the whole card. Secondly, what I want you to do is go ahead and find your Google Maps API key and paste it here. Once your key is pasted here, you're good to go. So we've added our map and we have our Google Maps API key set in there. Now we need to add the action JavaScript that will do two things. Now remember, I'm going to go back into our complete UX. When the person is using this system, when I click on the map, it does two things. One, it brings the map into view, and secondly, you'll notice that it puts an icon on the map. So it's essentially a two-step process. And we're going to use that powerful action JavaScript to automate this without having to write any code at all. So our step we need to do next is go back into our main UX, and what we want to do is go into JavaScript actions and create a JavaScript action that will do that. So I'm going to go to JavaScript actions. Now you'll notice I already have one here. So you could actually just use that one I've created, but I'd rather walk you through how to do this yourself. Now I'm going to go ahead and keep that in here, but we're going to create essentially a clone of this. So let's go ahead and click Add New Action. And let's give it a name. So in our case, we're going to go Detail, View, Map, Display, and just put like an _2. That way we'll have something distinct from the one that already exists. So click OK. Gives us a little note that we've created our action, but we actually have to edit it. Click OK again. So you'll notice we have our new action here, and it's a little red, showing that we're ready to go ahead and edit this. So click Edit Action. So we're in our action builder. So we want to do two things, and I'd like to do them in this order. First, I want them to move to see the detail view where the card is actually displaying the map. Then I want to trigger adding the icon to the map itself. So click Add New Action. We're going to do a very similar action to what we did before, which in this case is a panel action. Go to Action Name here. Select Set Active Panel. That's what takes and moves this into view for the user. Now the one we want to use is PC Detail View Map. Now you'll notice I name these very distinctly. When they start naming them by alpha, when you first create them, it's like 1, 2, 3. This is very important for you to name them when you create them so that it's easy to remember what the content is you want within each panel card. So that's all you need to do. Set the active panel to this map And that's going to be it. I'm going to say nav to map and click OK. So we've got our first action. As I mentioned before, you can chain actions together. So let's create a second action. So click Add New Action. Go ahead and look for map. If you type in the word map, it will go ahead and limit this to those few items that match that text. Now you'll notice there's two of them here, Open a Google Map component and Google Map method. You want the second one. This is an older one that's still in there for other reasons, but we want the Google Map method UX component. And click OK. So the first thing it's asking me is which map do you want to operate on? Because you could have multiple maps in your application. So you click the drop down and we'll select Map Service Call. Next, we want to do the actual action. So you can see there's a number of different actions you can take on maps. You can use it, you can create buttons and other things like that to control view, zoom, sizing, etc., refresh, up to you. But the one we want is called Add a Marker to the Map, the first one. Now when you select that, you'll notice that it adds a series of other questions we need to fill out. So for instance, it's asking us, well, you're going to add this marker. Where do you want to add it? Well, we could put in an explicit address, and that would just put a marker at whatever address or location we put here. But we have other options. So click the drop down and you can see. We can pick up controls on the component, which is what we're going to use in a moment. You could also point to a list control. You could run a little JavaScript function, or one that's very powerful is you can actually query the device and it will give back the current location, which you can put a pin on the map. This is very handy when you're running on a mobile device out in the field. So let's select controls on the component, and we're going to leave this as address. You can use both latitude and longitude, but we're going to use address. So what it's asking us now is, well, which controls should we look at to get the map information? So go ahead and select here. You'll see that it shows all the different controls, and we're going to select our address information. So address 1, city, state, zip. And that will provide enough information for it to geocode it and put the pin on the map. So click OK. Now we can modify this to add a new marker name. You also want to use bring marker into view, so it will automatically skew things to where it's at. And this is all you need to do. So you point to the map ID, tilt the action. We're going to use the controls to actually do that, and we click OK. And we'll go place marker on map. And now we have our panel action and our marker. So let's click Save. So now we have our action JavaScript, but we need to trigger that. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and we're going to come back to this in a moment. I'm going to go here. So you'll notice we have these icons. We haven't spent too much time talking about the control bar, but we're going to dive into that just a little bit to show you how we now connect that JavaScript action to the control bar, and specifically to the person clicking on this icon here. And we'll do that next. So now that we have our action JavaScript, let's dive into the control bar and connecting the action JavaScript to the button that's located on the control bar. I'm going to return to our main UX. And you'll notice that I'm going to scroll up here. You'll see that we're in a panel navigator. That panel navigator basically holds the different panels that are part of this. So as you notice, as I click through here, we have this panel, this panel, this panel, this panel here. And all of those are located in a single, what's called a panel navigator. And at the top of that panel navigator is our control bar. And the reason we do that is that way we don't have to put a control bar on every panel. Every panel that's within this navigator is going to share this control bar. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. So you'll see we have a panel navigator. We have our first panel card. We have our second one, our third. But notice at each panel card, we don't have any actual control bar there. We have a single control bar that's in our panel header right here. So it's a really nice feature that allows you to share content among panel cards without having to replicate it. And you'll notice within our panel header, we have a single control called a control bar. And that's one of the powers of the control bars, the fact that you can create very complex user experiences within this area without having to have a ton of controls. So as you can see, we have icons, buttons, it's laid out here. Traditionally, we used to have to lay those out as individual controls, but now we use a very powerful, and I almost call it a meta control, to do that. So let's explore that. I'm going to go into my control bar, and this opens up our control bar editor. And I'm going to go over here to items. So The way a control bar is structured, as you can see, there's a lot of elements to it, but the key elements are the following. The items that are on your control bar, the individual elements, are called items. So for instance, our button for contact, map, images, etc. are all individual elements. Then we have what are called layouts. So let me go over here to layout. What a layout is that how do we lay out those elements on the bar? So you can see we have a single layout here called layout 1, and you'll see this is where the row is. And we can have multiple rows on here. Now notice how it's structured. We have a before, a middle, and an after. The before is this area on the left side, the middle is in the middle, and the right side. So you'll notice that we have a button over here for moving back, we have a button for saving the record, and then we have a series of buttons in the middle. Now if I double click on this to edit it, you'll see this is how we laid things out. So we said, okay, I'm going to add an item here, I'm going to have multiple items here and here, and in this area we can move it up and down and adjust the way. Now the reason this is called before, middle, after is that currently we're looking at it horizontally, but it could be vertical, and therefore you have like a top, middle, bottom. So depending on how the orientation is, it's just going to lay them out in a certain structure. Now if I wanted to add something to this left area, I would click add and it would give me a list of all my control bar items and I could put them in there from there. So remember, each element is an item and then the layout ties them together to show you what it is. And what's really important is we can have multiple layouts. There's some really powerful capabilities where if you're in a specific situation, you can say, oh, use this layout or this layout or this layout. So it's very flexible. And the nice thing is you don't have like tons of different controls sort of collecting in your environment. It keeps it much simpler and much tighter. Now our last step involves what's called actions. So first let's go back to items. I'm going to find my button map. As you can see on here for our button map, we have different elements, our icon, styling, etc. But you also see here there's something called click. And this is the action that will occur when someone either taps or clicks on that button. And you can look up here on actions and go there. So now that you're on actions, go ahead and find button map on click. So when you click, this is what's going to be triggered. Now you see we have some item here, so let's go ahead and remove that. Now here you could go ahead and put any JavaScript you want. So you're not limited to Alpha's capabilities. You can use third-party libraries, etc. But I'm going to get rid of that. And here what we're going to do is click up here on Action JavaScript, insert code, and then find our new detail view map display _2. Click OK, and now that will be triggered. So as you can see, you can set up these very sophisticated actions, and then just within your application, you can trigger them using different methods that go from there. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and click OK. Click Save. Let's go into Working Preview. And we'll go ahead and navigate into the system. So let's go log in, service calls, go to the first one. Now we're here, we're going to click on the map button, and you'll notice that it takes us to our panel card and puts our marker on there. Now this is dynamic, so if I go back, select say our third item here, click the map icon, you'll see it updates the map and shows it in our panel card. And the way it's doing that is if we look, if I click here, you'll see that we have our address city. When I click here, it looks that information up, does the analysis, and then puts the icon on the map. So as you can see, it's very easy to add sophisticated behaviors and user interface elements with absolutely no coding required other than maybe a little copy and paste. So a common design pattern for service kind of applications is to capture signatures in the field. And this application has that capability. And in this section, we're going to show you how easy it is to add that capability to your applications. So I'm in the finished app, going over here. You can see we have a signature here. You can click sign it here, save it, and then it will synchronize back to the backend database and you'll have a signature captured. One of the neat things that the system does is actually save this as a vector, so it's easy to present it on reports and other elements versus regular images. So let's go ahead and modify our existing application to include that. So I'm going to go to main UX. First thing we need to do is locate our signature field. So you see we have our signature field. Now currently it's on that temporary spot. We want to move it to our panel card that's going to hold the signature. So let's go ahead and click the little stacked icon here. Locate the signature panel card, the opening tag, and click OK. And that moves it down there. Now we have to do a few little changes. First, you'll notice we're still a text box. So now let's change the control type. So go up to the right, click control type, and then find signature capture. This is a built-in one ready to go out of the box. And click OK. And you'll notice now you have a signature capture. And you can modify different elements to it, colors, structure, labels, etc. It's very, very flexible. Now we need to do one other important thing. We've changed this control to be a signature, but we need to tell the list control how to interact with that data, kind of give it some guidance. So let's go ahead and scroll up to our list control. Let's go ahead and open it up and go to our fields. So the first thing I want you to do is locate our signature control. Now you'll notice it's currently of control type label. Now when the person actually views it, it looks like an image, so we need to display it as an image versus the underlying vector text. So the first thing we're going to do is change the control type from label to image. Now the next thing we need to do is change the image properties. Currently it's saving as type name. We're actually inserting it into the database. So we want to go ahead and change that to what's called base 64 because in the field it's going to save it as base 64 data. Thus, Alpha knows how to take that information out of the database and instead of referring to an external image file, to actually render it as an image. Now, one other key important thing is that you'll notice the base 64 prefix. Currently, it has JPEG. Well, for the signature control, it requires PNG, so we just need to modify that. So select there, and you'll notice it's got a pre-made one here. Just look over here, click there. There. Now, if I hadn't done that, Alpha will automatically warn me and update it for me automatically, but I want to save a step. So now we're good to go. Click OK. Let's go ahead and save this and do a working preview. So we'll go ahead and scoot in to log in, service calls. Go into our first one here. Now I'm going to click on my signature icon. Takes me to that panel card. I already have some data in there, but I can click sign and we can put in some new signature, click accept, and then we can save it. Now what I'm going to do is go back to our list. And in a moment you'll notice something. You'll see the list is displayed, but it's got an orange caret next here. Now before, when we were demonstrating, whenever we saved, it automatically synced and gave you a message. Well, that's an interesting capability of Alpha, meaning you can control how the synchronization occurs. So in our case, because remember we set up a new list, it used default values. In this case, it's up to the user to synchronize it. So actually, if I click here and I scroll all the way down to the bottom, it actually created a synchronized button. And if I click that synchronized button, now it's going to call the backend server and update the backend server. And if I go back to my list, you'll see that the caret is gone. Now we do want the user to be able to not have to do that every time. And again, that's a choice. You may want to have them do a sync step manually. To do that, there's a built-in capability. And let's go ahead and show you that while we're here. Let's go back to design and let's go into list service calls, double click on that. And then what I'd like you to do is find the detail view tab, go there, and then look for what's called synchronization policy. And let's go ahead and double click that. So there's a lot of text here, but basically this allows you to say, hey, if someone saves something on the mobile device, go ahead and immediately perform it or attempt to perform it as synchronization. So you have two options. You have client to server, so it's going to take whatever's local and send it up. Want that to happen. And it will also do server to client. And I want to have both of those enabled. Again, this takes a little bit more bandwidth because basically it sends everything up and then refreshes and brings everything down. Which again, nowadays with modern phones, that's not bad. But if you have a lot of data, you may want to kind of decide how you want that to handle. Now, very important also is that this will happen automatically. But if for whatever reason the device is offline, can't perform the synchronization, you will not lose your local changes. The user will still see the little orange caret so their items are preserved. And then the next time they try to do a synchronization, it'll try to reconnect. So that's kind of a nice feature, is that you sort of have a failback in case anything happens from that standpoint. So again, check there, click OK, click OK. And now whenever you click the Save button and save the list changes, or the detail view changes, it will automatically synchronize to the back-end system. Another key feature of most service dispatch applications is image capture. The ability to capture images in the field of the current work, the previous work, current state, you name it. And this information is very powerful because it allows you to have a very clear understanding of the environment and provide that to other people on the team. So our next step is to go ahead and add the image capture capability. So you'll see it's very similar to our process that we use for signature capture, but there'll be another step to actually trigger the action of capturing images. So first step is to put our controls where we need them. So let's go ahead and scroll down, and you'll see that we have 3 controls: service image 1, 2, 3. Now in this particular application, I chose to store the data in the database, but Alpha does have the ability to store it as external files. There's certain limitations, pros and cons, but for our demonstration, it made it very simple. So our first step is to go ahead and move these onto the panel card where they need to be. So we'll click our little move icon, scroll down until we find our service images area, and we actually have a container ready to go for that, and click OK. Now we need to do a couple other things. First, you'll notice we're still displaying them as text boxes. So let's convert them to display images. So we can click on the first one, go over here to the control type and select image, and click OK. Do that for each of the 3. Now we need to do a couple other little formatting issues. First thing I'd like to do is make sure that this image stretches out and shows the width of the screen. So let's look at container number 3. And you'll notice that container number 3 has a width of 100%. So the idea is that this is going to expand to take all of the detail view panel card. But what we need to do is click here, and in here you can select the width. And I tend to like to do it at 90%. So I don't want it to the whole thing. I want to leave a little space so we can do that. So I'm going to click 90%. And I can manually do that for each one, or I can use my trick to go up here, selecting the first one and the first width, selecting our little eyedropper, scrolling down and setting that there. And you can adjust them. They can be fixed width. It's really up to you on how you want to display that information. So now we have those 3 items there. Let's go ahead and click Save to go ahead and save it at this moment. Now let's also go into our list control. And much like the signature, we need to go to Fields, and we need to locate our service images. And I just want to confirm that we are showing them as images. So it picked up that information. Notice it's got a little B, that's for blob or binary image. So that's important because the list will understand that the kind of data being collected on the mobile device is a certain type. In this case, an image information, it'll store it. And you'll notice it's storing it as JPEG, but you could change that to PNG. It's really up to you on how you want to store it in the database, and we'll convert it to the right ones. Remember, signature has to be PNG, but it's up to you to decide how you want to store that image information from there. So let's go ahead and click OK. So now that we have our field set up, our list set up, we can now add the buttons that will actually trigger the image capture process. And we'll do that in our next lesson. So let's go ahead and add those buttons, and more importantly, the action JavaScript that's going to make it easy for us to capture images. So I'm going to scroll back down. I'm going to find our container that has our images in there, and I'm going to create 3 distinct buttons. So let's go over here to Other Controls, and then I can click Button right here. So again, Other Controls, Button. And I'm going to say Capture Image 1, and click OK. Now I could go ahead and create the other 2 buttons right now, but I want to show you a little trick to make your life a little easier. So let's just go ahead and work on this button, and then we'll come back to the other 2 buttons in a moment. So first thing we're going to do is I want to change this to make it 100% of the width, so it's a larger button. So I could go over here and type width 100%, or there's a trick. I can go up here, click the % button, and then I can set the percentage here. And again, since our container 3 is 100%, it's going to extend the width of that there. Now the other thing I want to do is just verify my button appearance. And let me go ahead and show you that. Alpha has a lot of really nice features in terms of doing styling. So I'm going to go ahead over here to sub theme, and you'll notice currently it's called capsule, which is what I want. But let's show you the other alternatives. So as you can see, we have capsule raised, capsule subtitle, your base kind of buttons. You also have things that look like circles and icons. So there's a lot of really nice ways you can change the buttons using these sub themes to match exactly how you want your customers to use your application. So let's click cancel and go on out there, and we'll leave it to capsule. Now we do want to actually give the user a visual indicator of, that you're capturing an image here. So you'll notice currently the button layout is text only. So let's modify that and say imaged followed by text. So you'll see some new features that are exposed right here. Let's go down here to image name, click, and we can pick an image. Now we can use built-in images, we could use images you import, but the one I use a lot is SVG, which is really powerful because it really looks good on devices of all kinds. So click SVG icon, click select, and you can see we've pre-built and added a whole bunch of ones right in the system. And what's nice is there's a whole set of libraries out there of other kind of SVG icons that make your app look fabulous. So I'm going to go ahead and type CAM for camera, and you'll notice they have a nice little camera image there. And click OK. And it gives you a little preview. Click OK. So now instead of just text, you'll have a little image and text, which is really good for multilingual type applications. So we've got our button set up, but what we really want it to do is do something. So let's go ahead and double click on here to open our button. This will open up the edit click event. And actually, let me show you something real quick. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of different types of actions again. I could click right here and go into it and it would show the same thing. But the shortcut is to double click, takes you into here. Now, as we mentioned before, everything that happens on here is JavaScript. So you could go in here and start writing your JavaScript. But in our case, we want to go ahead and have Alpha do that for us. So I'm going to click here, add new action, and then I'm going to type the word image. And you'll see there's a couple different ones, but the one we want is an image capture for list detail view, camera and photo library. Very, very powerful. The idea behind this is that if we have a list detail view, it knows how to take care of everything for us, which is what we like. So let's click OK. First thing it's going to ask us is, well, when I go capture the image, where should I save it? So I click here, and you notice it's showing us our 3 service images. I'm going to click the first one. Click OK. And it's set different elements to it. Now, very important right now, its image capture method is HTML5. And that's what we want because we're running this in a web browser. But we also have the ability with Alpha to create applications that run on mobile devices using PhoneGap. So if I click here, if we go to a PhoneGap or PhoneGap Preferred, we could set a whole bunch of other sort of parameters because we have more access to the hardware. But in the case of a web app, you really need to use HTML5. Now you'll see we have the option to create image thumbnails automatically. We can resize the image, which is going on here and that's often good because you don't want to overwhelm these massive images that you may or may not need. Really up to you. And we also have some ability to do some other local events, say after you capture an image or cancel, you give them a message or do something like that. So again, we selected the service image 1, HTML5, click OK, say capture image, click OK, and voila. So we've got our new image capture button. We could go through that whole process to create our other buttons, but we actually have a shortcut. I'm going to go ahead and right click on button, and you'll notice we have duplicate control. So I'm going to duplicate it. It's going to tell me it's going to give a new unique name to it. You notice it keeps the same text. I'm going to move it down 1, go up over here, and change it to image capture 2. And it's going to have all the other traits. Now we do have to do one other thing. Remember, when we set up the action JavaScript, we pointed at this image, but in this case, for this button, we want to store it here. So I'm going to double click here, This opens up our action JavaScript. I'm going to double click there, and this gives us our image control. We can click here, move it to image 2, click OK, and we're done. Now let's do that for the third one. Find the button you want to duplicate, right click and say duplicate. Gives us a warning. Going to move it down, open her up, change them to service image 3. Now I want to do other thing is go ahead and change that to capture image 3. And let's go ahead and save this. Now we've done that, we can do working preview to test it out. Log in, go to service calls, go to the first one. I'm going to go here to images. Now you'll notice that this exists already because we had existing data in our database. Normally these would be empty, and you can actually set up so if it is empty, it shows a certain particular image. So I'll click on the button. Now in our case, this is opening up a file browser because we're running on our local machine. But when you're on a phone, it's going to ask you if you want to take a picture or select from your camera roll. So I'll go ahead and select image here. Click open, and you'll notice it does two things. One is it's stored this image data in the list control, and at the same time, it's now displaying that image on the screen. So I'll do the same thing here. Select, say, this one here. Now we can click save. After I've saved it, I can return to my list, and you'll notice that it has automatically synchronized our information to the backend system using the built-in capabilities, especially since we turned on the auto synchronization capability. You'll notice it took a few more moments because it's a larger amount of data, so you want to be a little careful about how large your images are, etc. But there are other methods for kind of giving the user an update and status on how the synchronization is going, and we cover that in future trainings. So as you can see, it's super easy for you to add the ability to capture images remotely, store them remotely, and then synchronize them to the backend system using the built-in action JavaScript Alpha provides. Now you might be asking yourself, why does Dean save his projects so often? And the reason why is that every once in a while might have a problem, might make a mistake, etc. And there's a built-in function that is very powerful in the development environment that I'd like to demonstrate now. So let's say you're working on your project and you either inadvertently or on purpose or whatever do something that makes it not what you wanted. So in this case, for instance, I did all that work putting together the images. Now I've removed them. I'm going to go ahead and click save here. Now you go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Well, let's go back in here. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to go back to our web projects control panel, and I'm going to go to my main UX. That's where I was editing on there. I'm going to right click on here and go down to restore backup. And you'll see that we have a list of basically restore points. So every time I save a UX, it's going to create a copy for me. Essentially a poor man's version of version control. So I can say, oh, you know, I screwed that up. So I want to go back to this spot here, click restore this file. It's going to confirm that, say yes, and it's restored. Now if we go into our main UX, you'll see those modifications are gone. Now what's neat about that is that sometimes you do something and then maybe a couple days later you're doing something else and you go, oh, you know what, I really should go back and get a hold of that stuff. Well, what's neat about this is that this restore function allows you to go backwards and forward in time. So if you go, oh no, I don't really want that, I want to go to the most recent, you just click on there and say restore file. So I've had scenarios where I will actually go back, restore a file, copy some stuff out that I might have deleted, then go all the way back to my current one and paste them in there. So it's a super handy. Now Alpha does have built-in Git integration. So this is not a substitute for good quality version control. And we can actually do that from within the system with a Git repository. And there's actually training that walks you through how to put all that together and include it in your development process. And that's super important in case you're doing multi-developer kind of environments. So you can all be checking things in and out, having control points for deployments, for production, dev, QA, etc. So that's a neat little feature I just wanted to share with you. Save often, you'll not regret it. So now we're ready to type a few loose ends, do a little formatting, and get it ready to go. So let's do that. Let's go into Main UX here. And remember, when we started, we went ahead and moved all of this content to this one card, but that really doesn't make sense. So let's do a few modifications. First, let's go ahead and move our part information to our part panel card. So select part description through billable time. Go ahead and click here. Locate the parts labor section and click OK. So that starts moving it out. So when you go to that, now they can edit their information on that panel card. Now we want to do a few other things. We've got some other fields. So for instance, you're always going to have key fields and things like that that the user is never going to edit. But you want to keep it there so you can collect data and do other analysis, etc. on the mobile device. But you don't want to show it to the user. So a common practice I will do is create a panel card called PC Hidden. And in there I can tuck away all these things that I want to have in my application, but the user's never going to see. And by calling it that, I know exactly what the content will be within that panel card. So let's go ahead and move a few other things in here. First, we really don't need GPS lat lon. And in fact, we don't need these buttons because we've already created them in our different locations. So I'm going to highlight everything from GPS to those buttons. Now I kind of keep those buttons in there, and I'll show you real quick as I can go in and at any time see the code that Alpha generated so I can copy that and move that elsewhere. And you'll notice it's all set up for the list control, etc. So it's kind of handy to have those around. You can always recreate them later, but I like to have them. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, GPS through button synchronize, and I'm going to go ahead and move them down into my hidden area. A few other things I want to collect is I would like to go ahead and take my sample ID. Don't need to have that in there. And I'll put it at the top of my PC Hidden. A few other ones are kind of hidden fields. Contact ID, let's move that. And finally, we'll also go ahead, move this problem ID. And the tech ID. No need to have that for the user to be seeing it. Okay, so we've moved out all the little things we really don't want them to see. So we can go back here. Now, when we have our detail home, there's certain things that we want to show but not have them edit it. So currently, as we defaulted, these are all text boxes. So you can actually change these into labels, and labels are shown but not editable. So let's go over here, go to the control type, and select label. And we can do that the same here. And for company name, there's really not a method to do this in bulk, but you can just quickly go through and create these labels. There are also methods when you create the actual list control, you can tell it what kind of controls you want to use when they're actually created. But I just accepted the default to make it very simple and go quickly. So we're almost done with all of our labels. And our phone. Now these I'd like to go ahead and keep as editable. So we can actually be able to edit the problem description, change the scheduled time, and other aspects there. So those will stay there. Now one other thing you'll notice is that we have our fields here, and you'll notice we have these three fields, city, state, and zip. And you'll notice we have little carriage returns after it, because those will appear on different lines, but maybe you want them all to appear on the same line. So you need to do two things. One is you remove that little line break, and you can do it two ways. One way is you can go over here and find break and say none. But a quicker way is just go up here, find the little toggle break, and remove it. And that turns it on or off. And so to lay out these, I just get rid of the line breaks. The other thing you'll notice too is that the current width for city is 100%. So even if I have taken away that break, it's still going to stretch out the whole width, which is not what I want to do. So we can just get rid of that and it will auto size it. So I'll go ahead and click width, change it to empty. Same thing for state. And last but not least is zip. So now they'll lay out a little nicer. And again, depending on the size of the field, they may go to the next row, but you're going to have a lot better presentation in here. So let's go ahead and save this. Go into working preview. And let's go ahead and enter in our application here. Go to our service calls, go here. We still have one issue. So you notice it's starting to look a little nicer. We have our call time, our contact name, etc., address, but it's still taking up a lot of space here. And we're not seeing this cover the whole width here. So let's go back into it. Let's go here to container 1 and look at the width. And you'll notice when it got created, it was created with a 50%. And that means it's only going to be 50% of the width. That's why you see all of that. The layout doesn't look really nice. So we can just go ahead and change that either by typing in 100% there or going up here and selecting 100%. So now this width of the container will be the full screen width, and then each of these will extend themselves to take the other, or take the whole width. Now, one other thing we want to double check is for each of these, you'll notice that the position of the title of the label is on top. So you may not even need a label. You could actually remove that to get more space on the screen by going to none. I'm going to leave them in for now. So you can kind of tweak and adjust them to your heart's desire so it looks the way you want to go there. And you have full styling. You'll notice that if I go back up here, you have the ability to add your own classes, to modify your own styles, so you can really fine tune it to exactly what you want to display on the screen. So let's click Save. Go into working preview, and we'll enter in our app. And we're starting to see something a lot nicer. Notice we don't have that line, full area here. You may want to actually put them side by side. It looks like there's enough room there to really shrink that up so it's all on the same row. It would make it much more tighter. But realize that they can still click and drag and move up and see the areas they can edit. Now you'll notice these are longer. Let's do one last adjustment here. So you'll notice product description here. Probably want to change that title, but also this is not showing all of the information. So let's go back to design. I'm going to go here to problem description. First thing I want to do is go down and find my label. And you notice it uses the database name just to make things simple, but I can make it look a little nicer. Now the other thing is you'll notice that it defaulted to a text box. If I go up here and select text area and save it and do a working preview, we'll see what it looks like. Okay, click login, enter here, go into our first one. Go ahead and scroll down. You can see now it's going to allow you to see more data. And what's kind of neat is actually if it's a lot of space, it'll actually let you move and modify this to actually see more data. It's a pretty handy little control. Some things are very simple and some things need a little bit more room to be able to be displayed. Now, as you've seen, and this is the powerful thing about Alpha, is that there really is very little coding going on here. Basically, there's a few little pieces of action JavaScript that you put together, maybe a copy paste function, but 95% of the time you're not even going to have to touch it. So you can focus more on the look and feel and the interface and be able to modify it very quickly. And that's one of the fun parts of low code, is that you get immediate results from your work without having to go through and write a whole bunch of code and do other things to make it work well.